You're watching Boomer TV, and the name of today's show is Calling All Grandparents. Your help is needed. Florence Ann Romano is the host to empower parents and grandparents to let love in, build their village, and ask for help when they need it. And we'll get to Florence Ann Romano in a moment. This is Andy in the Boomer studio, and I want to invite you to come aboard and join this amazing Boomer community. Register on the website and get updates, show schedules, and member benefits. And now, Florence Ann Romano, the Windy City nanny, with how to balance your personal life and being a caretaker.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, guys, I'm back. I told you I wouldn't leave you for too long. Some of you out there are like, oh my gosh, this girl keeps coming back here and she's yelling at us all the time with all that crazy energy. I'm so happy to be back. I've missed you guys. I think about you guys actually every single time after we hang up and we're done. I'm always like, oh, I want to talk about that. And oh, that was such a good question. And oh, I wonder what, is going on in her home or his home as a grandparent or as a grandparent, grandmother or grandfather in different ways. So you guys stick with me. You stick inside my soul here. It's such a privilege to be able to navigate these waters with you because it's such a special relationship that you are cultivating and crafting with your grandchildren. And I always say, I always go back to, I was raised in a house where my grandparents, my mother's parents lived with us. So this is a world I know really well and one that I cherish. It was a sanctuary for me growing up in the home with my grandparents. And I want to share a story with you guys because I think you'll all appreciate it. So this weekend, I think about my Nana and Papa constantly. There's not a minute of the day that goes by that I'm not missing them, thinking about them. And they've since gotten their wings and are watching over me in a different way now. But over the weekend, my mom and I had gone in to get a couple of our winter coats kind of like repaired. I'll put it that way. They had some wear and tear. Well, my mom had tried on a coat that she had found in her closet. And she's like, it doesn't really fit well. I don't know what's going on with this. And it turns out when she looked inside the coat, it had my grandmother's name, her mother's name inside of it. And she looks at me and goes, oh my gosh, Florence Ann, this is Nana's coat. And I said, oh my gosh, it does look familiar. I remember little Nana. She was like so tiny. You could put her in your pocket, walking around in this big coat. And Mom's like, I don't really like how it looks on me though. She says, so Florence Ann, come over here and put it on. So I put it on and she's like, you know what? I think we could probably rework this coat that it could fit you. And would you want it? It was Nana's coat. And of course, I get all verklempt, my eyes well up. And I'm like, yeah, of course I want Nana's coat. So this darling girl comes over to me and says, listen, we can redo the lining inside, but that doesn't mean you have to lose your grandmother's monogram. We can keep that. We'll cut it out, put it into a pocket inside, and then we'll put your monogram. She said, and then one day when you have a child, your daughter can have this coat and your monogram can be moved into the pocket with your grandmother and then the tradition can continue on. Well, my heart was like fluttering all over the place thinking of this moment. And I could hear my grandmother's voice in my head and feel her all around me saying, wear it in good health, Florence Ann, wear it while you can. That's always what she used to say, wear it while you can. And so I know she'd be so happy about that. But it's those moments, guys. It's those moments that they come boomeranging back to you in some sort of way that are important. And today's topic is about finding the balance, your personal balance as a grandparent and, being a caretaker and your life. And gosh, isn't that what we're all trying to figure out is balance? But grandparents often can lose themselves in the world of their grandchildren because it's all consuming. And if you also are a caretaker in the true sense that a nanny is for a child, you can lose your identity to that. So how do you keep your personal life and your life as a caretaker somewhat separate? And I'm going to say something that maybe isn't all that popular or maybe what you wouldn't expect me to say, but I don't think you need to totally keep it, separation of church and state here. I think there needs to be overlap. I think there needs to be there needs to be a permeating aspect to it, because it is your personal life and your role as a caretaker and grandparent that make this such a unique relationship. You do want to bring in your personal life to your grandchildren's experience, but you also need to be taking care of yourself, making sure you're getting what you need. A good friend of mine always says you need to go to that fountain every day and nourish yourself and feed yourself what you need. And maybe that sounds so hippy dippy or whatever it might be, or however you interpret it, but the essence of it is really necessary. You need to make time for yourself to figure out what is balanced to you. I can sit here and tell you how I balance my life, but the way that I do it and the percentages I balance my life in, that might not work for you. And also, it changes daily. Sometimes my day is 100% about really what I need to work on and prioritize, and I'm going to kind of let everything else fall to the wayside. Or some days it's a good mix of everything, and I'll go to sleep that night feeling like I did a good job of juggling that day. Other days, not so much. So, a few things. I want you to evaluate how you are spending your time with your grandchildren, with yourself, with your spouse, your significant other. I want you to look at the pie and figure out how you're dividing it. Again, it doesn't need to be the same thing every day, but you need to do that evaluation, that self-actualization of figuring out how you are splitting up that time and are you getting what you need. So do that evaluation. And number two, don't be afraid to communicate with your grown children about what it is that you need, how much time you can give, how much energy you can give, and how you're being treated. So remembering the fact that you are still your own person. You are still a friend to many. You are a spouse. You are a daughter. You are whatever it is that you are. All those identifiers are still important. You know, my Nana and Papa, they really lived and breathed for us. We were their reason for living. And it was a beautiful testament to their love for us. But I do wish that my Nana and Papa had had more of a social life, that they had had more people to enjoy time with. But they were constantly and consistently devoted to us. So watching what they did, and they were very old school Italian, where that's what they did. That was part of their culture. But I do think back on what they did and how they gave, how they loved, how generous they were with mind, body, and spirit, and wish that it had been a little different for them. Wish that they were able to have more of that personal life. But they chose what they chose because we were the priority for them. But if you don't choose to get lost in the swirl of your grandchildren, do not feel bad about that. What my Nana and Papa did is not necessarily the right choice for you, or what I'm condoning or suggesting or encouraging that you do. I'm asking you to figure out, what is that balance? That question of balance is so important in our lives. And I've given you some tips here of how to evaluate that, but it's going to take you actually doing the work to step back and figure out, what does balance mean to me in my life? How do I define it? And then once you do that, you can start moving forward. So when we come back, we're going to get some questions from you guys out there about what you're struggling with in this theme, and try to work the problem. So back to you, Andy.
Well, thanks, Florence Ann. Yes, indeed, we will be back, and I do remind everybody that you can register with us on the website, and you can also get show schedules, find out about member benefits, and you can find out more about Florence Ann and all of her shows. The Windy City Nanny, and today with how to balance your personal life and being as a caretaker, and now with your FAQs.
So Andy, what do we have? What do the people want to know?
Okay. Well, look at Becky. Didn't put her age or where she's from in here, but she says that she's loves helping her daughter with the grandkids, but her daughter always waits until the last minute to ask for help, and it really, really makes it hard, she says, to live kind of a normal life. And
Yes,
she,
exactly.
one of those things.
Right, Becky, listen, your words are being heard and echoed everywhere across the country, I think. It's not an on-demand situation, though sometimes that's what it is. That's what grandparents are for. You're that 911 call. Hey, got to get over here. I got to go. I need you. That's great. That's village, right? Those are the people that you can call. But that's not the way to consistently operate. That's not a formula. And I think what you're looking for is more consistency so you can have that balance. So you can have your personal life. Of course, you want to be with your grandchildren or your granddaughter, as you specifically said, but asking for some consistency, I think, is completely within your right. And I understand that it's not always going to be that way, and you are going to be that person that can step in the last minute. But I'd suggest you sit down with your daughter and say, can we come up with a schedule? Are there certain days of the week that you're going to need me, or at least just hours wise that that every Tuesday and Thursday you're going to need a few hours of she's going to need a few hours of your time, and be able to back into it that way. And again, emergencies will come up, last minute things will come up. But I think asking her to come up with more of a schedule will actually not just benefit you, but her as well. I imagine that she's living in a state of stress right now. There's a lot of stress swirling around her. And I'm sure she doesn't want things to be as last minute as they are, but she's probably reacting to a lot of variables out there that is making it difficult for her to plan. So see if you can sit down with her and talk about where it is that you can maybe take some control in the situation, even if it's not perfect, even if it's a slow build to some more consistency. The conversation at first is going to be the most important.
Well, Joe here is 61. He's still working, and he says he sometimes has to take business calls while babysitting his grandkids, and it's slightly awkward, I guess, when the kids are screaming while he's on a business call. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, well, Joe, I'll tell you, I've been seeing that in so many different videos on Instagram or Facebook or just social media in general, where someone's on a Zoom call or a conference call and there's a kid that's wheeling in on, in the background and screaming. And the good news is, we live in a world today where everyone understands that you're probably multitasking, you're probably home with kids. It's not going to be the most perfect conference call in the world. Most people are very understanding of the variables that exist today in this COVID world and working remotely. But I understand that you also want to appear professional. So I think you could very simply say in the beginning of a conversation, maybe before any noise even happens, that you are taking care of your grandchildren, and maybe you're going to hear a little noise in the background. And I think you can make a little joke of it, make a little light humor inserted in there. And I think that that's fine. I understand that before COVID, everyone was very buttoned up and very worried about kind of hiding their personal life. And that's maybe one good thing about COVID. Maybe we've seen the real sides of life, different flavors of life now, because we're not hiding it. We can't hide it. So I think there's a delicate balance between being professional and also allowing people to be exposed to that reality of the situation. So I don't feel bad about it, but if you want to control the situation a little bit more, you can make that disclaimer ahead of time just to warn everyone. And I think you'll maybe be able to be more focused on that call if you know that everyone's already prepared for it, instead of just waiting and wondering, oh gosh, if I hope someone doesn't scream. Oh my gosh, I'm praying that someone doesn't scream. I think it's better to probably make that note ahead of time.
Florence Ann, well, this one, I guess, is from a real planning type person. Her name is Joan, and she isn't sure what she's going to do over the holidays, but she wants to spend time with her grandkids and her friends, but she's worried how she's going to, how that's going to come out. I guess that's not real clear, but she's just a little worried about planning during the holidays with her grandkids.
Well, Joan, it's hard even with COVID. I think that's also probably peppered in there with the question about whether or not you're going to be able to be with your grandchildren, perhaps because of the pandemic. And I know protecting everyone's health is paramount, and especially those with, immunodeficiencies or being in a certain bracket in terms of age. I know everyone's thinking about the holidays already. I know I certainly am. I've already had several conversations with people about like what's going on this holiday, and everything's kind of up in the air. I don't think it's wrong for you to start a conversation with your grown children about what the plans might be, even if there are going to be things that are in flux. I think starting the conversation now would be good. You sound like a planner, Joan. I am too. I like to kind of know where I'm going, how I'm going, what I'm doing. And so just getting some structure, which it sounds like you're craving, or at least getting some indication, some guidance is important to you. So I would encourage that conversation. It's funny, the common denominator usually through our conversations from with the viewers, it's always a common denominator of communication. The communication is really key to solving a lot of the things that are kind of rolling around in your mind, or things that are giving you anxiety or stress, or are giving you pause. So I would encourage as much conversation as possible about the things that are on your mind or lingering out there. Now, I don't mean to go crazy with it, constantly badgering people to get answers when things are up in the air. We are living in these times where we have to be more flexible. We have to be more patient. But I think starting a conversation about things that are important, like the holidays now, there's nothing wrong with that.
If you can you come right back or take a break, and you let people know how they can reach you and what's
Yes,
going on? Okay.
of course.
Sounds good. Florence Ann will be back. We will also remind you and invite you to feel free to come aboard and join this amazing community. Register on the website, get updates, show schedules, and member benefits. And now let's get back to Florence Ann about what's coming up.
I have had so much fun with you all, and I'm so thankful that you let me share parts of my life with you. And my grandparents, honestly, are probably the most treasured part of my story. When I think of my life, kind of like a labyrinth or kind of like a mosaic, all of our lives are, kind of this mosaic and all these different pieces that are put together in different colors and different shapes and sizes. My grandparents made up a huge part of that labyrinth in my life, a huge part of that mosaic in my life. And I'm so excited for you guys because you're laying those mosaic pieces down right now with your grandchildren, with your grown children. And it's truly an exceptional gift to be able to have that bond, but then also be able to explore each other in a way that a lot of people don't oftentimes get to know one another. And like I always say to you, I got to know not just Nana and Papa, but Florence and Adam. Those were their first names. I knew them as people. I knew about their past. I knew about, what was Nana's favorite moment with her father in her childhood. And I knew, about the dates that she went on. And Papa told me all about the war when he served, and told me about his greatest accomplishments in his profession. We really were a part of their story. And I want to leave you with this today, even though it's not specifically about the balance of your personal lives, but it's the idea of your personal life though, and opening up your heart and that story to your grandchildren. Let them get to know you, because that is one of my favorite things about memories about my grandparents is we were very curious about their lives. We recorded them telling stories all the time. We kept journals of stories that they told us. And believe me, they're going to want those one day. They are going to want that for posterity. And because I always think to myself, I don't have my own children yet, and my children are never going to know my grandparents. But I want them to know them. I want them to know them somehow, whether that's through video or the stories I tell, the journals I kept, all of it. So as you're building this beautiful mosaic of life, and your grandchildren are a big part of that, allow each other to really integrate, really be a part of each other's lives. And we're going to dive into that more deeply in the coming months. And I'm going to be back with you guys on October 16th, and we're going to have all sorts of new topics and new things to chat about. But until then, I'm tucking you in my heart, just like I tucked little Nana into what I felt like was my back pocket my whole life. I'm tucking you all into my hearts. Thank you for letting me into your lives, into your village. I'm here for you. And until next time, I always say, have courage and be kind.
Thank you, Florence Ann. Thank you very much. And Florence Ann Romano, the Windy City Nanny. You can find out more about her on Facebook, on YouTube, and at bloomerboomer.com. And if you like this, please like us on Facebook and follow us. In the meantime, come aboard, join the Bloomer Boomer community, register on the website.